Presidential longevity in China. What might a third five-year term for President Xi Jinping mean for East Asia and the world? Thousands of party leaders gathered for the 20th Chinese Communist Party Congress in Beijing this week, where they applauded Xi's achievements of the past 5 years and laid out plans for the next 5. Here to provide some insights on what to expect is retired Brigadier General Robert Spalding. Mr. Spalding is author of War Without Rules, China's Playbook for Global Domination. General Spalding, Rob, it's great to talk with you again. First, your thoughts on this Communist Party Congress. Have you noticed anything different from the last gathering, say, 5 years ago, or is it more of the same?
Well, I think the big difference is the recognition that Xi's going to be around for the rest of his life. You know, there was speculation prior to this that maybe maybe there was a coup, maybe he was being moved out. It's clear that he is going to continue to lead the Chinese Communist Party forward. And so from that standpoint, I think his speech on Sunday laid out a pretty clear message that the things that people find terribly egregious about the Chinese Communist Party, in particular his leadership of the party, are going to continue and accelerate. So I don't expect much to change in terms of the things that seem to be frustrating to a lot of people out there.
Well, if the CCP is in this continual state of war without rules that you mentioned in your book, specifically then, where do you expect China to dominate militarily? On the sea, with an expanded navy, leaps forward in outer space, cyberspace, AI, where?
Well, I think all the above. One of the challenges that they'll have now that the Biden administration has really gone after the chip industry, assisting them in elevating their chip technology, I think they're going to be hindered by that, just in their ability to have the most advanced chips. That still means that they do have some chip industry. It's just going to be several generations behind where the United States is. That being said, militarily they're looking pretty squarely at Taiwan, and she said that. And I think one of the things that we have to consider is that at any time, particularly after this party Congress, and then March is when they lay out the next 5-year plan, I can expect, or we can expect that it's possible the Chinese can invade nearly at any time after this party Congress is over.
Well, at that CCP Congress, you mentioned President Xi again threatened Taiwan. The Chinese economy is in decline a bit, and the United States is China's top trading partner, more than $500 billion in goods each year. So how can they afford a conflict with the U.S. right now in Taiwan or anywhere else?
Well, they have been accelerating their transition to their own market economy based on the Belt and Road Initiative, their relationship with Russia, Iran, and North Korea, and other authoritarian states. They and the Russians in particular, and the Iranians and North Koreans for that matter, all want to get off the dollar. So it seems that what they're going to try to do, or attempt to do, is use the yuan or the renminbi, the Chinese currency, as the dominant currency in that system. And when you look across the nations of the Belt and Road Initiative, they get a lot of energy from Russia and Iran. They have raw materials from countries in Africa and other areas. And so they're going to create their own economy that's based on nations that follow the Chinese model, which is a model of oppression of their people. And, unfortunately for the Chinese, and the Chinese people, they've had access to the U.S. and other free market economies for over 3 decades. That's allowed them to take technology, talent, and capital. So hopefully, going forward, as we recognize the second Cold War, we'll begin to treat these nations, these authoritarian nations, like we did the Soviet Union, and cut them off from that technology, talent, and capital. And the first indication that things are going that way is the fact that the Biden administration just announced that they're going after the Chinese chip industry in a big way. And essentially, when you look at it from the Chinese side, what they're saying is they've essentially decapitated China's ability to evolve their chip industry. So that's a good first start. Clearly not enough, because there's other things like pharmaceuticals and rare earth metals that we've got to get after. But if we keep this up, I think we're on a good path.
And the Chinese government told its citizens in Ukraine this week to evacuate immediately. That warning fueled fears of a Russian nuclear attack in the war there. So what do you make of that?
Well, I do. I am concerned that we're closer to the use of a nuclear weapon than we ever were during the Cold War, precisely because during the Cold War there was still a respect and fear for those types of weapons. And what I feel that I see today in nations' capitals around the world is this more or less cavalier attitude when nuclear weapons are discussed. Oh, that's not a possibility. Putin would never do that. The weapons never went away, but the seriousness and respect and some of the fear that we had for those weapons has disappeared from capitals around the world, to include Washington, D.C. Now, that gives me great pause, because I do think that we'll be willing to push Putin in ways that we probably wouldn't have done during the Cold War, because we recognize the danger of having those weapons be used. And so, the standoff, for instance, the Cuban Missile Standoff. President Kennedy was wide awake and understood the implications of nuclear war, and understood the seriousness, understood the damage, and the quite, how close we were to destroying humanity. And I think that's the kind of fear and respect that politicians in the West and the free world need to understand, because I know that for a fact that Putin is as seriously considering those weapons, because of the way that he still understands that in many ways those weapons didn't go away, and they're still an important part of his arsenal.
Whatever happened to mutually assured destruction, right? You use them against us, we'll use them against you. So, retired U.S. Air Force Brigadier General Robert Spalding, author of the book War Without Rules, China's Playbook for Global Domination. We always appreciate your insights. Thanks for being with us, Rob.
Thank you.